what the fastest decaying city in the United States is? And which one also has the highest crime rate and leading unemployment rate in the US? Well, since you clicked on this video, you can probably guess already that city is Detroit. Despite its comeback city narrative, the Motor City is still losing a large chunk of its population. From the horrible taxes and high unemployment to the soaring crime rate, here are the top 10 reasons not to move to, or let alone visit, Detroit, Michigan. Number 10, the population. In the United States, Michigan, which is Detroit's home, has gone through a significant economic and population drop in recent decades. The city's population has fallen from a high of 1.9 million in 1950 to only 680,000 in 2015, thereby removing it from the top 20 U.S. cities by population for the first time since 1850. However, the city's combined area has a population of 5.4 million people, which currently ranks 12th in the U.S. The vast majority of this population loss was really due to Detroit's deindustrialization. This moved a lot of factories from the inner city into the suburbs. White flight was also spurred on by the Great Migration, in which hundreds of thousands of blacks were relocated from the South to Detroit in search of employment. This caused congestion in the inner city and ended up leading to racial housing discrimination. The unfair racist practices of separation, mortgage discrimination, and racially limiting bonds in Detroit added to the overcrowding of certain minority groups who were residing in some sections of Detroit, like the Black Bottom. According to a report, Detroit ranks number 1 amongst the 15 cities with the largest population decrease between April 1st, 2010 and July 2019. Also, Detroit lost about 43,867 people in the last 9 years alone, bringing the total population in 2019 to 670,031. That is a 6.1% drop. Cities in the U.S.'s southern and western regions have experienced rapid growth, on the other hand, with the South boasting 10 of the top 15 fastest growing cities. Number 9, crime rate. As of 2018, Detroit had the third highest murder rate among major cities in the United States after St. Louis and Baltimore, and also the 42nd highest murder rate in the world. The rate of robberies in Detroit declined by 67% between 1985 and 2014, while aggravated assaults increased. As a whole, however, the city's crime rate has decreased considerably from its 1980s peak into the 21st century. In 2017, there were 267 murders in Detroit, down from 303 in 2016. The violent crime rate of 2,057 per 100,000 was the second highest in the nation after St. Louis, and roughly 10 times the average rate of the suburban counties of Metro Detroit, which had violent crime rates below the national average of 394 per 100,000. In recent years, some neighborhoods in Detroit's downtown area have seen a significant decline in crime, while the crime rate remains very high in most cities and has a considerable impact on daily life. Number 8, bankruptcy of Detroit. Bankruptcy is a popular term and process through which people or other entities who can't repay debts to creditors may seek relief from some or all of their debts. In most jurisdictions, bankruptcy is imposed by a court order, often initiated by the debtor. The city of Detroit, Michigan, ended up filing for Chapter 9 bankruptcy on July 18, 2013. This was the largest municipal bankruptcy filing in U.S. history by debt, estimated at somewhere between $18 to $20 billion, exceeding Jefferson County, which is Alabama's $4 billion filing in 2011. Detroit is also the second city by population in U.S. history to file for Chapter 9 bankruptcy, more than twice as large as Stockton, California, which filed in 2012. Detroit's bankruptcy filing followed a declaration of financial emergency in March of 2013, which resulted in Kevin Orr being appointed as emergency manager of the city by Michigan Governor Rick Snyder. Orr's subsequent negotiations sought to get creditors to willingly, quote, take a haircut on Detroit's debt and were ultimately unsuccessful. Number 7, poverty. Detroit remains the nation's poorest big city. Detroit's median household income was just a little under $30,000 in 2017, equating to a 5.9% hike from the previous year. Reports have stated that there has been an ever-increasing share of residents in the metro area living in poverty. In fact, that number has shot up to around 16.2%, up from 14.4%, and a significant majority of them live in neighborhoods within the city of Detroit. The share of poor residents living in extremely poor neighborhoods, defined as those with a poverty rate of at least 40%, climbed more than 3.5 percentage points in 20 metro areas in just the last 6 years. Number 6, unemployment. Most Detroiters have returned to work amid the COVID-19 pandemic, but many families continue to have difficulty affording basic daily necessities. Recent studies have even indicated that Detroit's unemployment rate dropped from around 48% in May and June to 38% in late July. About 1/4 of Detroiters in the labor force say that they do remain unemployed due to layoffs and business closures resulting from the pandemic. As a result, some Detroiters are struggling to afford necessities, and more than half of residents are uncertain if they're even going to afford food that they need in the coming months. And get this, 43% of the population stated that they have skipped or only partially paid one bill or more in the last month. Some families reported having already experienced service disruptions. In the last year, 1 in 8 households in Detroit had their phone or internet service shut off, and the majority of these shutoffs occurred during the pandemic. Number 5, housing. Detroit is well known for its housing challenges, but the challenge with its affordability is only rising due to the aforementioned public awareness. A recent national report found that between 2014 to 2017, Detroit had the fastest rent increase in the country when measured as a percentage of income. Now, the average Detroiter needs to spend almost half of their income on renting the average apartment. That is incredibly expensive. For years, issues of vacancies, foreclosures, and decay have dominated the narrative. By contrast, housing affordability was seen as a challenge more flourishing places faced, a rich city problem, as it were. With its 30% housing vacancy rate and over 24 square miles of vacant but buildable land, how could Detroit have trouble housing all its residents? However, multiple factors, which include poor housing quality, low income, and rising rents, have created a growing affordable housing shortage. Number 4, transportation. If you think that Detroit's population decline was alarming, consider the total decentralization of its transportation network. At the end of World War II, Detroit and its neighborhoods were home to the most extensive urban vehicle system in the United States. Today, the streetcars and commuter rails are all but gone. Until a new streetcar line opens up next year, Detroit will be the largest American city without surface rail transit. The annual ridership on urban and suburban transportation is now 36 million, a decline of more than 90% from its 1940s peak. Detroit's entire city has lower weekday bus ridership than 2 of the busiest individual New York City bus routes. It's not for lack of need that the region doesn't support transit. Despite its auto-centric reputation, Detroit is 8th nationally its percentage of careless households, behind the nation's transit capital of New York City, Washington, D.C., Boston, Detroit, Chicago, and Philadelphia, as well as Baltimore. The region spends $69 per capita on transit each year, with the area's disorganized system a burden on residents who can't drive or just flat out don't. Number 3, urban decay. Urban decay is the process in which a city that was once flourishing and functioning properly fails into disuse and disrepair. Common indicators of a city in urban decay are empty plots of land, abandoned buildings, high unemployment rates, and even high crime rates. Detroit, unfortunately, fits all of these categories into one and is the most famous example of urban decay in all the U.S. Detroit is often likened to a ghost town these days, where parts of the city are so abandoned that they've been described as looking like farmland and even complete wilderness, or something just straight out of the Fallout games. In the 1940s, Detroit was actually the fourth largest city in the U.S., thanks mainly to the automobile industry and, of course, the wartime production of various tanks and aircraft. However, in the 1950s, the automobile industry was no longer confined to Detroit. The industry began to spread out, with competition from foreign makers such as Volkswagen, who were beginning to make their way to the American shores and butting in on the big three automakers' territory. Detroit was still the center of industry, but many jobs by that time had left the city. More than any other city in America, Detroit has felt the adverse effects of globalization. Recently, there has been a significant nationwide movement of people moving back into cities. However, Detroit has felt the opposite of those results. Once dubbed, quote, the blackest city in America, Detroit now holds the name of America's comeback city. Number 2, taxes. If you're a Detroit homeowner, you might get the feeling that you're paying through your nose for property taxes. That feeling has been validated, more or less, in a report released last year by the Lincoln Institute of Land Policy. The rankings for property taxes on a commercial property don't get any better for Detroiters. The city has moved up a place, coming in first in the nation for the highest effective property tax rates on $1 million commercial properties. Detroit homeowners pay about 3.81% of their home's market value in property taxes alone. Detroit's property taxes are so high due to the low property values. It takes relatively high taxes to meet even the most basic public service needs. Lastly, number 1, laws. Laws were created to protect our general rights and safety, right? But some laws are just simply so odd and weird. Each and every state has its own fair share of weird laws, and there are some rules from the state of Michigan that are really weird. From adultery being illegal but can only be punished up to a complaint by the affected husband or wife, to riding a train while drunk being illegal, no selling of cars on Sundays, and no man may seduce and corrupt an unmarried girl, this and many more strange laws governing the city of Detroit make it really questionable as to why you would even want to live there. And that's it for our list of the top 10 reasons not to move to Detroit.